Okay, hold on to your headphones, everyone, because wow, some big news just landed. Apple and Meta, they've just been hit with massive EU fines. We're talking over 700 million combined. It really feels like a major shift for big tech, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. And this isn't, just some random fight. It's the Digital Markets Act, the DMA,
Mhm.
really showing its teeth for,
Yeah.
I guess, the first time in a big way.
The DMA, right, that came in this year, 2024.
Exactly. And its whole goal is to regulate these huge gatekeeper online platforms. Think your main search engines, the big social media networks, the major app stores. The idea is to make competition fair.
Okay, so that's what we're diving into for you today. We're not just going to report the numbers. We want to unpack why this happened. What did Apple and Meta actually, do wrong according to the EU? And maybe most importantly, what does it mean for you for how you use the internet?
Yeah, consider this your shortcut to getting your head around it. It's complex, but super important stuff.
Definitely. So where should we start? Apple.
Let's start with Apple. The main issue is their App Store. Specifically, that requirement they've always had developers have to use Apple's own system for any in-app payments.
Right, I know that one.
Well, the DMA, one of its key rules is that these gatekeepers, like Apple, need to allow alternative payment systems. The thinking is, give users more choice, maybe bring down costs.
So the EU basically told Apple, you can't be the only payment gate here. Developers need other options, maybe cheaper ones for users. Okay, so what happened? Did Apple just ignore that?
Well, that's what the EU concluded, yeah. They found Apple didn't really comply. They kept enforcing their own system, made it hard or maybe impossible for developers to point users towards those other, potentially cheaper payment methods.
And the result was?
A 500 million fine, which
No.
is, that's a lot of money, even for Apple. It's actually one of the biggest fines they've ever received.
500 million euros. Wow, okay. But Apple must have a defense, right? They're not just going to say, "Oop."
No, definitely not. Their main argument is user security and platform integrity. They say their tight control over payments keeps everyone safe and ensures the App Store works smoothly.
That sounds reasonable on the surface, I guess.
It does, but the EU sees it differently. Their counterargument is that this approach it stifles competition. By forcing everyone through their payment system, Apple gets its commission, and that, the EU says, pushes prices up for consumers. For you.
And Apple's going to fight this.
Oh, yeah. They've already said they plan to appeal the decision, so this story isn't over yet.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. Thinking about you, the listener. If Apple did have to allow these other payment systems properly, how would that actually affect you? What could you see change?
Well, you might start seeing, say, subscription apps or games offering a discount if you pay directly through their website instead of through the app. Or maybe different tiers becoming available outside the app.
Like bypassing the Apple tax, basically.
Exactly. It could create more price competition. Maybe developers would feel they have more room to innovate on features if they aren't losing that 15 or 30% cut right off the top on every transaction. It could, I suppose, even lead to new ways apps make money we haven't seen yet.
Interesting. Okay, so that's Apple. A big fine focused on payments. What about Meta? Facebook, Instagram, they got fined too.
They did, yeah. 200 million for Meta. Their issue is different, though. It's about advertising transparency and competition on their platforms.
Advertising, so what's the accusation there?
The EU is accusing Meta of basically favoring its own advertising tools over services offered by third-party companies, giving themselves an unfair leg up in the ad tech market.
Okay, how would they even do that? Like making it harder for other ad companies to work effectively on Facebook or Instagram?
That seems to be the core of it. The investigation likely looked at whether Meta's own tools got, say, better access to data insights, or maybe a smoother integration, making it harder for outside competitors to offer a truly comparable service.
Right, so if you're a business trying to advertise, you might feel forced to use Meta's tools just to get decent results.
That's the potential consequence, yeah. And EE's view is that this doesn't just hurt those competing ad tech firms, it ultimately harms the businesses trying to reach customers, too.
How so?
Well, less competition in ad tech could mean less innovation, fewer choices for advertisers, maybe even higher ad costs down the line. It limits the ecosystem.
And Meta's reaction, are they appealing too?
Yes, they've also said they'll challenge the fine. And, this is happening against a backdrop of the EU looking much more closely at Meta anyway, particularly around data privacy and other antitrust concerns. It's not happening in a vacuum.
So, thinking about the listener again, this ad competition thing feels maybe a bit less direct than the App Store payments. How might fair competition in advertising actually, trickle down to what you see online?
It's definitely more indirect. But a healthier, more competitive ad market could lead to better advertising experiences,
Mhm.
maybe more relevant ads, potentially less intrusive ones, as companies compete on quality, not just access.
And perhaps smaller, innovative businesses might find it easier to reach you, not just the big guys.
Exactly. It could help foster a more diverse online environment where it's not just the platforms themselves dictating all the terms of engagement for advertisers.
Okay, so when you add these up, 500 million for Apple, 200 million for Meta, over 700 million total. This feels like more than just a slap on the wrist. What's the bigger picture here? What's the EU really trying to say?
I think the message is pretty unambiguous. The EU is signaling very clearly that the era of, let's say, relatively unchecked power for these huge tech platforms is ending, or at least they want it to end.
And the DMA is the main tool for that right now.
It is. And it's not just a one-off thing. It fits into this broader pattern we're seeing from the EU, pushing for stronger data privacy rules, like GDPR, demanding more transparency about how algorithms work, even starting to regulate AI.
Yeah, it's consistent. We've seen Google get hit with big fines before, investigations into Amazon. This feels like the next major step.
It definitely feels like a step up. And looking forward, Apple and Meta, they'll have to seriously rethink how they operate in the EU, especially around app stores and advertising,
Or face more penalties.
or face potentially even bigger fines down the road. Or in really persistent cases of non-compliance, the EU might even start talking about forcing structural changes to their businesses to make them comply. That's sort of the ultimate threat.
Wow. So this isn't just about app payments or ad tools. It really feels like a fundamental struggle over who controls the digital economy, how these giant companies interact with us, the users, and all the smaller businesses that rely on their platforms.
That's a great way to put it. It's about shaping the rules of the road for the digital future, trying to make it a more level playing field.
Okay, let's try and summarize then. The big takeaways. Huge EU fines for Apple and Meta, driven by the new Digital Markets Act. Apple's fine relates to forcing its payment system in the App Store.
Right, and Meta's is about allegedly favoring its own ad tools, creating unfair competition.
And the EU's message seems pretty stark. We are serious about regulating big tech power.
And for you, the listener, the whole point of these regulations ultimately is meant to be creating fairer digital markets.
Yeah.
That could mean changes in app prices, maybe different ad experience, a more competitive landscape overall.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for you to mull over. How might these EU actions influence things globally? Will other regions follow suit?
And what other parts of big tech's influence might come under the microscope next? There's also that constant tension, isn't there, between, say, platform security and integrity, which Apple emphasizes.
And fostering open competition, which the EU is pushing for. Where's the right balance? Definitely something we're thinking about.